All right. I'm just gonna go live on. It's taking. Okay. So I guess I'll get started. I'll say right away. Um, this is the Library of Life. I'm doing this series, as you guys know, just different things and ways to handle life in general. And today's topic is about relationships. And I really wanted to throw some therapy in there, not just life resources, but therapy is a life resource that a lot of us take for granted, and insurance covers it, but it's also organizations that offer it for free, like Caring Conversation Center. And I want to talk about relationships today. And we have Jeremy here, and he's actually working to specialize in working with couples, marriage, family therapists, but that goes for all different types of relationships. And we want to talk about relationships in regards to therapy and the different types of relationship. But Jeremy, would you like to introduce yourself first?
Absolutely. Hi, everyone. My name is Jeremy. I'm one of the marriage and family therapy trainees here with Caring Conversation Center. I am really looking forward to just our topic today on relationships. As we all know, our relationships vary with our family, with our romantic partners. So hopefully today we can get talking on some really interesting topics.
Yes, I'm excited. And if you guys have been following this Library of Life or this live series or anything with C Notes, you know I'm gonna always center it and bring it back to you. I do want to start this live by talking about the most important relationship you can ever have is with yourself. And if you want to add anything before I start talking a little bit, because I do want to focus on the relational therapy aspect and the different type of relationships you can seek therapy for, because it's not just intimate partners, and then intimate partners look different. But yeah, can talk about more about how and why the relationship with yourself is the most important relationship you're going to have, and honestly how it impacts all the other relationships. This is going to help us get into that.
Exactly. I think you hit the nail right on the head, honestly. So, the foundation of, the relationships that we have with ourselves sets the tone for every other relationship that we have in our life. And if we don't know our own needs and values, then we end up expecting others, people to define them for us. So
Mhm.
going into relationships with like a true understanding of who we are just helps set up the relationships that we have with um, our romantic partners, our family members. It sets a solid foundation for that part.
Yeah, I agree. And you definitely mentioned something that I talk about a lot. You said the relationship with self is definitely sets the standard and the precedent for all the relationships in your life. Um, it's just how the relationship with yourself is a mirror for all the relationships in your life. And a lot of times we do be projecting our own insecurities, our own issues onto others. And I'm so happy that we're talking about this, because we talked about this in one of our supervisions. How I was saying I'm taking accountability for my part in my relationships. And I'm like, honestly, I know that they were sleeping with a stranger because they didn't know me. And honestly, I didn't know myself. And I had to really take a step back and do the work on myself. And I'm very transparent in everything that I do. But I talk about how I experienced sexual abuse, a lot of violence. Like, none of my partners knew what I went through as a child. None of them know, no, none of them knew any of the things that I experienced. Is especially in you specializing, especially with you specializing in working with couples and relationships and things like that. Is there something that I'll just say, what made you decide to get into this field?
Yeah, so honestly, it's really interesting. My journey of becoming a marriage and family therapist really started with just the foundations of me understanding how complex our relationships are with ourselves and how that impacts our relationships with others. It's all like an interconnected web. And throughout my time, I've received my BA in philosophy. And one of like the main questions in philosophy is, what does it mean to live a good life, right?
Mm-hmm.
And part of that answering that question, I really do believe includes understanding our relationships with others, right? So I think what it means to live a good life is very interconnected with our relationships with others.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
yeah, so that really set me off on really wanting to work with families and couples,
Hmm.
really try to help them live a good life.
No, you definitely said a lot of what I always say to people. Because a lot of people in my therapy sessions, they ask me like about, well, I seen this on TikTok. I saw this literally. This is something that one of my clients said to me. I saw this on TikTok. Like a lot of people are trending to not having relationships with their family, their parents, and things like that. And I'm not going to say because in some extreme cases, a relationship is not doable or repairable, and it is. But I don't know. I feel like everything can be repairable, but it does depend because I can't speak on every situation because I haven't experienced. But I'm like, I don't feel like you're on a properly healing journey if you don't ever talk to your mom or you can't talk to your dad or your brother or your sister. You should be able to have established those boundaries and things like that so you can have a relationship with them because in this life, you don't want to go through it alone. We were created to be connected to others. And of course, the family is the first. But if you don't have a relationship with anybody in your family, how do you know if the things that you're really working on really working? If you can't even sit in a room with them, you can't have a conversation with them, you can't without taking things personal from what happened to you in your past life. That's what therapy is about. And I'm happy that you got into to this because this is a field. I mean, because you could have got into it any other way. Because there's a lot of different type of therapists, and relationships are a big one. It's a big part of the healing journey because you got to have relationships.
Absolutely. At the end of the day, we are social creatures and we don't live in isolation.
Hmm.
Our relationships, I think we sometimes kind of put it in a narrow box of what a relationship is, but that also includes our relationships to like our social community as well. The way that we show up to ourselves and our relationship really impacts like how we just navigate the world, and just it's the lens from which we view a lot of
Yeah,
things.
and that's what I tell everybody. Therapy is just giving us a different perspective, giving us a new set of lenses and looking at the world. And you're right. Lisa said it can be repairable if both parties are willing to put in the work. And I
Yes,
feel we talk about this all the time. Both parties have to be willing to do the work. And as you mentioned, it is just more than intimate partners. It's our relationships with how we interact with the different people we encounter in the community. We have clients who do therapy, roommates who are going to college, and this is a stranger that you're going to be living with, and you want to have that communication like in a because you that's how you become mature in having those conversations. I was like, oh, I'm happy. I never thought about that. That's thinking outside the box because every time you have a conversation with someone, that's a relationship being established or not being established. It's something that's going on. And how you do with that starts with self.
absolutely. Self-love too.
Yeah.
Yeah. I always say, self-love really isn't selfish. It's what allows us to really show up for others.
Because you got to put your oxygen mask on first before you can assist anyone else.
That's right.
But yeah, definitely two parties and both parties having to be willing to work with one another. Can you talk about some of the any type of therapy or advice you would give to the different relationships? If you want to start with advice for a person really trying to get to know themselves, we can talk about that first. Let's talk about the relationship with self and how can a person work on that relationship with themselves before we get into the relationship with your parents and your partners and then the different types of relationships in intimate partnerships all together.
Right, 100%. So I think one of like the foundational components of that is really understanding what are our own values that we have, that we cherish for ourselves and we wish for others to embody. Right?
Mhm.
Because if we don't understand the values that we hold true and dear, then when we get into relationships, we end up expecting other people to define them for us.
Mhm.
Maybe we value authenticity, and maybe we haven't reflected too much on that, and then we go into relationships and expecting to find authenticity there instead
Yeah.
of knowing what it is like for us, and
Oh,
then trying to seek it out in others.
I'm so happy you brought that up. I was literally talking to my best friend about this. When I talk about um my journey in just knowing myself, knowing thyself, I was trying to, I'm like, I'm a real person, you know, I'm real and I want to be my authentic self. And I was like, but what does that really mean? And I associated authentic with being natural. And a lot of people think that, so I did too. So I was having a struggle, like, but I wasn't wearing a wig for somebody else. I wasn't doing it to please anybody else. I wasn't wearing nails and all that good stuff for anybody. I literally did it because I liked it. And I was conflicted for a long time. Like, honestly, this was part of me going through my 6 months of depression before I came out on the other side. And it was depression and being authentic. How am I depressed and trying to, because I'm putting my definition of what authentic means on everybody else's terms. Can't
Right.
nobody define what authentic means. And I'm so happy you brought up values, knowing your values. So this is all about relationship with self. And your advice is to know what your values are, because I talk about this a lot too. I talk a lot all the time. So the audience can dig in. But what are your values? We say we value families, but if you take a step back, how are you, does your relationship with your family look like you value family, even with just your kids, your household? Because mine didn't. I was working hard for my kids, but you're not spending time with them. How is that a relationship you value if you don't know them and they don't know you? And that was some real truth that I had to, because I'm like, don't nobody know my kids like I know my kids, but you don't even know your kids. But you don't know yourself first, because you can't end what you said with the self love. You can't love someone else if you don't love yourself. I always tell everybody, you can only give to the capacity you're able to receive, you know, whatever you're willing to put out there, that's the capacity that you're going to get back. And if you don't
Yes.
love yourself, how can you expect anybody else to love yourself? If you don't respect yourself, how can you expect anybody else to respect you? And what do you value? You say you value family, but you're not never with your family. You
Right.
say you value time, but because it sounds good, because what
Yeah.
you are, a lot of our lives, it looks like we value money. And in most of the country in the world, I'm gonna say most of the world outside of this country see Americans as, we value money. We don't value principles. We don't value family. We don't value friendships. And I'm just gonna say it, we don't really even value God. But that's a conversation for another time. But if there's something else that you want to advice or guidance in just relationship with self, like in helping people try to get that.
Yeah, I think also a part of it is understanding where we kind of like derive these values from.
Yes.
Because, you know, the inevitable reality is that we are social creatures and we learn what love is from maybe, romantic films or things that we see in media growing up in our families, and we try to mirror those type of things. And it's more so of us just like reflecting on the stories that we tell ourselves about like the values that we want to have, and understanding what does that really look like for us, and does it inherently have to mirror what we were socialized to believe in to a certain extent. The
Mhm.
stories really do matter that we tell ourselves.
Yeah, I love that. I'm happy that you brought that up. Not only knowing what you value yourself to build that relationship with self, but where do these values stem from? Is it
Exactly.
something that just sounds good and that it follows the mold of whatever, whoever even created the mold, or is this something deeply ingrained in you, and you know in your heart that you want to follow this value because it aligns with everything that you believe? So I'm happy that you did even bring that up. But is there anything else as far as guidance or advice with relationship with self before we get into any type of relationship with others?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So I think, well, introspection is a really important part. That's just our capacity to look within, to
Mm,
really reflect on the things that we have. But with self-love, it's understanding how do you show love for yourself, So then in that way, you understand how you can extend that to others. And the thing is like love is really complicated, right? We all know there's like these entirely different forms of love, but our self-love, without it, we often look for others to fill the gaps. And the foundation of it is respecting and valuing ourselves.
And if you're not in alignment with your own self, it's
Yeah.
hard to self love. It's hard to have self respect, or even have a value systems based off of what you really value, because it's not even in alignment at all, and you're going to live a miserable life. And this is you living a life out of obligation and not alignment and not integrity, because you're not doing it for you, you're doing it for somebody else. And speaking of doing it for somebody else, this is where people come in. And
Right.
this why being in alignment with everybody in all the relationships you have in your life, including that of an employer. And honestly, I want to get to that. We're gonna save intimate to last, because that's what everybody want anyway. Now this with your job, and I know it's hard to, I'm gonna say it's challenging for a lot of people, because once again, America and Americans are viewed as the biggest value that they see people valuing in America is money. And because we're money driven, of course we gotta, how are we getting this money, and is it in alignment with who you say you are, what you say you value? So can you speak on terms of relationships in like the with self and your employer possibly?
Yeah. Oh, of course, absolutely. So I think you mentioned something really important there, is like the relationships that we have even with our employers really do matter, because when we are working towards, trying to live a good life, the inevitable reality is that we need to make money to live a good life, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's just to provide ourselves with the basic foundations of our needs and wants, right?
Yeah.
But like even in our like when we have our employer relationships, how we navigate those is really also influenced by how we navigate relationships with even like our family members. How do we deal with conflict and that, as well as how does that reflect how we navigate relationships and like between employees and with our bosses and things of that nature. So it's kind of like they mirror one another. It's more so of like how we've accustomed ourselves to navigate those particular types of circumstances.
Yeah, and it's really, really ironic that we even talking about this, because I didn't know we were going to talk about the relationships that we have with our employers. But
Mhm.
I was talking to this woman, and she was telling me she had to leave the job because they were paying her really good money. But
Mhm.
one time the school called, and it happened on two occasions, and nobody came to pick up the son, because the job wouldn't even tell her, because they didn't want her to get off the floor. So they putting her son in hospital, like in the last, when it happened the second time, the school called CPS,
Wow.
because but your job didn't care enough about your family that they wouldn't even tell you that your child needs to be picked up, because they wanted you to still work. Like that's, I wouldn't want to work a job. It don't matter. I don't care how much money. And they kept trying to offer her higher. We'll give you a $5 raise, a $10 raise, because that's God too telling you, is this really in alignment? Because I talk about this too all the time. We think God's sending us sign by sending us more money. That's not God.
Right.
You know it ain't. That goes against everything you say you stand for. But that's if you living in integrity. Because can't nobody pay me enough money to neglect my kids. But that's
Yeah.
me, my values. So does your job really align? I will leave jobs and I will not work with people if it's not in alignment. But that's me. And that's what I believe in integrity.
Of course, and that kind of gets into like to what extent are we willing to compromise our own values for the
And
sake
if
of
you're
some
looking to
pursuit?
compromise your values, they're not your values. Or maybe you need to really see, because I said I value my family, but I wasn't at home enough. I'm working, thinking I need to make more money to really value my family. No, them spending that quality time, something we can never get back, is what really is going to count long term.
So
Um,
true. So
yeah.
so true.
And if you guys have any questions or comments, you can, yeah, definitely drop them in the chat. But any other advice or guidance that you would give a person who, that, because I'm not telling everybody to go out and quit your job, but make that be something you think about. honestly. Does this job really align with my values? And if not, slowly but surely do what you have to do to navigate and move around. If that's starting your own business or finding a company that does align with your values and morals. Because that's what causes anxiety and that's what causes that stress. And we see this in therapy. Your relationship with your employer causes people to come to therapy. I've known plenty of people who came to therapy because they were stressed from their job.
Of course,
Yeah.
because you know the stress that we have from our work, it bleeds out not into work too, because we take time out of our own day in the morning to get ready for work. On the drive home, sometimes we're reflecting on how our day went at work, those type of things. But really, in terms of just like really reflecting on those times, it's understanding to what extent is our values really show up in the work that we do. Because compromise, right? Inevitably in relationships, we do have to compromise, but when it comes to work, we have to understand to what extent do we really want to compromise,
Yeah.
you know? And I think that's really one point of reflection is to what extent do I want to compromise my own values and the things I believe in for the sake of, you know, pursuing this particular type of job.
And honestly, in compromising, I feel like that's one of the easiest places. I'm not gonna say easiest. It's an
Hmm.
obvious one that people compromise because they tell themselves, "I gotta pay my bills. If I don't pay my bills, we're not gonna have a roof over our heads." And I understand, but then it's like you want to do this for the rest of your life. No, you need to move around. It's nothing worth sacrificing your relationship with your kids, your relationship with your partner, because that work relationship and dynamics can impact all of those because that's what it goes into next. Now I would say one of the areas or one of the relationships we compromise the most is with family, so we can move there next. The family dynamics and relationships. And yeah, can you give us advice and guidance like people who are struggling with relationships within family?
Yeah. So I think, familial love and relationships, it's, the bond that we have with our parents,
Mhm.
children, chosen family, these are often like tied to like care, responsibility, and belonging, right? So family relationships are complicated. That's definitely a fact.
Mhm.
However, it's a matter of how we navigate those relationships with our family members that really do matter. Are we one to run away from conflict? Do we stream towards the conflict? Are we willing to, I guess, negotiate our own uh, compromise to a certain extent with family members, or do we just let things like float by? But in family relationships, I think we have to also reflect on how much do we feel like we belong in our family, and that kind of really helps us really understand where we fit
Mhm.
in those roles.
So, like, what task would you say? Because I think what you just said at
Mhm.
the end is really important. I feel like it's a sense of belonging, and
Yeah.
that's really another reason why a lot of people come to therapy. I feel like it's all different types of relationship dynamics with people. Because when they come, they're like, "I just want to have a better relationship with this person," or "I want to have a better," It's always a relationship with some other dynamic, and never a better relationship with self. I'm just say that a lot of people don't seek therapy for themselves. They're
Right.
seeking because I want to be a better parent. I want to. Why am I always getting fired? I got anger issues. Like it's something outside of me that's causing all this pain and suffering in every relationship in my life. But no, you're fighting against yourself because you're not in alignment with yourself, and you're trying to be in alignment with your mom, your religion, your
Mhm.
job, your all these different relationships you have in life, except self. And this is what you're saying, like, so now you're compromising your values for family, because
Yeah.
sometimes your values, not sometimes, a lot of times your values are not going to align with the family that were brought into this world with, but you're creating a new family and new dynamics, these new relationships, and navigating that is, do I, not even really saying do I belong, but what is my role in this family, and
Yeah.
not what it is, what do I want my role to be in this family, you know?
Exactly. 110%. It's really reflecting on that part, of because that kind of like brings in a lot of introspection, right, into like where do we want ourselves to be within our family,
Mm-hmm.
and what do we want those relationships to look like, and to what extent are we willing to really implement what we want to have in our families. Because like, you know, we can say that we want our families to accept us for like who we are. However, are we engaging in those conversations that facilitate acceptance, or are we running away from that? Because if we're
Yeah.
running away, then
Mhm.
we're never going to fulfill the role that we want to have in our families.
Yeah, and then also when you say that, which I'm happy you said that, what role do I want myself to have in this, in whatever don't think about what you want your mom, like, because a lot of people when we say that, I want my mom to be so communication and loving and caring. That's not your mom. No, what can you do in your capacity? Because you can't say what you want other people to do. How do you want to show up as a mother, as a sister, as a daughter, as a granddaughter? What does that relationship look like to you and what you can do? Because what you can do shouldn't be determined on what they're willing to give you, because then that's a trying to control mechanism. It's
Right.
not a I want a relationship with my mom because I want a relationship with my mom, because now you putting rules to it. And when you try to control that narrative, it will never work out. So you know what? I want to be able to have a relationship. Like if something happens, I want them to be able to call me, but I don't want them to be overbearing. Like, oh, it's a car. I mean, like I'll say I'm running out of gas or I need this. That's not the capacity. If it's a real emergency, I want you to be there. I want to check on your well-being. I want to know your history. I want to, your goals and your dreams, your aspirations. I'm not saying I want to help you, but I want to know what they are, because I want to know you. I want to have that relationship where I know my mom, or I know my brother, or I know, you know what I'm saying? And I'm willing to help to my capacity. And what does that look like to me? And really doing that. Like a lot of people like to write these goals of, I want to have a house, 200,000. I want to have a business. But do you want to have a relationship with your daughter? Do you want to
Right.
have really that? What's on your goal list? Because you say this, because your values and what's on your goals don't even align with each other. You say you want to have, I want to be the best grandmother ever, but your goals say I want to be a business owner and I want to own my house. How you gonna do all of that and have a relationship with your grandchildren? So what can you do to? Because we get caught up in this rat race. I'll be talking. I don't want to keep getting off subject. Yeah. Uh, any other advice you'll give on somebody who's really trying to find that guidance with their family?
Yeah. So I think it's really being willing to engage in tough conversations,
I
right?
agree.
And
And it doesn't have to be tough. It's honest. That's it.
yeah,
Vulnerable. That's it.
exactly. Being vulnerable, being authentic, and
Yeah.
really showing up in our true selves to our family members. So that way, like they understand who we truly are and how we want our relationships to change. So having those type of conversations, and it really being a place where like you're coming from a genuine, authentic self and not really trying to like please what the other family member wants to say,
Mhm.
or wants you to say. So definitely having conversations. Um, and I think also there's a simple fact of sometimes we have to accept where like our families are in those times.
And in doing that,
Mhm.
what are you going to do about that? Because you can't change.
Right.
You can accept where they are, and then what are you going to do with it? Because maybe in accepting who they are, you need to provide that distance for 3 months, 6 months, maybe even a year sometimes. And being okay with that is still sad. Like people think by having boundaries and really keeping them in place makes it's going to be easy. We're not saying it's going to be easy, because we're emotional creatures. We're human. You know what I'm saying? It's going to be sad. It's going to be hard. It's going to be challenging. This is something you've never done before. Setting boundaries and sticking to them,
Of
and
course.
set boundaries that align with you, because a lot of us don't even know ourselves. So figuring out yourself and yeah, setting those boundaries and having those conversations. It don't have to be tough or hard. It's just you being honest about your feelings. It's gonna seem hard because you've never done it before, but so is riding a bike, so is tying a shoe, putting on a sweater, zipping it up, buttoning it up,
Yeah,
going to school, like all of that. You never did it before. So now let's be intentional about what we doing for the first time. Having those hard conversations, being honest, like where I'm at in this life. And yeah, with yourself and all the different relationships. And now we know, okay, let's go into friendships before we go into intimate partners.
sure, absolutely. Um, and just to circle back for just 1 second, I think you said something really important is going into those things with intention,
Yeah.
right? And I think that kind of even goes into with our like in our friendships,
Mm-hmm.
um, maintaining and connecting with people with intention,
Mm-hmm.
um, because our values and things they also show up in our friendships as well. Like
Yeah.
to what extent are the friendships that you have really a mirror to the things that you really value? Because if you value honesty and genuineness, but you're maintaining friendships that maybe you notice there isn't honesty and there isn't genuineness, then to what extent are you really getting the most out of your friendship? To be honest.
Yeah, and you can't keep those friendships just based off time. Like I've been knowing this person since kindergarten, but
Yeah,
that person's values does not align with where you are at in your life right now. And that's the thing too. It doesn't diminish the friendship, the time that you spent. It doesn't take away because I feel like a lot of people feel like letting go is letting go of that friendship or saying it didn't serve me. No, it was needed when it was needed. I had fun when I had fun with you. We had a good time. I did grow. I did learn. But where
yeah,
I'm going and where I'm headed at now, it's just it's not in alignment, and I don't want to be what. Because I even tell my kids this, like I can't be practicing what I preach. I can't not practice what I preach. So if I tell my kids like, look at your flock, I gotta look at my flock too.
yeah. Absolutely. And also, like within our friendships, like we also have to understand, like, what is it that really defines our friendships to the extent that we want them to, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because with friendships, it's kind of really interesting because when you think about how love shows up in our friendships and how love shows up in intimate relationships, romantic relationships, there are some like distinguishing features. Like with our friendships, the love that we have there, it's that wanting of shared experiences with someone, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Wanting to share that moment at a concert when you're
Mm-hmm.
having fun or going out and things of that nature.
The relationships with friendships are is so unique and it's
Yeah,
dynamic because it's not based on blood and it's not based on intimacy. You know what I'm saying? Like
right.
physical intimacy or a need for you to be my protector or provider or a need for you to be my homemaker or birth my babies. It's
Yeah,
not a need for us to create a family. It's literally off, like you said, that shared experience. So those should be more in alignment than any of the relationships because it's simply off of love, genuine love,
yeah,
and those are the relationships we do pour a lot of time into outside of family and our intimate partners. So we need to be choosing wisely in all of that. And someone said siblings, shaking my head. But siblings that's a whole different because it is different than parents and family. Like it's a different dynamic under families, but I understand it's a real hard. That's another. People have the hardest relationships too with siblings because it's like we first of all we share blood, but it's still we want to. It's like a friendship, but blood, and then
right.
wanting to understand how did we grow up in the same household and turn out so different. Um, so if you can speak on siblings, somebody asked about siblings before we go into intimate partners, or if you have anything left on friendships. But yeah, if you can speak on siblings relationships.
Sure. Yeah, sibling relationships. Wow. So like you mentioned something that's really important there. It's like so there's the blood relationship that we have with them. We share genetic data with them.
Mhm.
And then but then they're also kind of like a friendship relationship as well, right? The thing with sibling relationships, and it kind of ties back to our relationships with our families, it's like although like we may hold certain values and beliefs. um, Even someone that grew up right next to us may not share those same exact things, and that's what makes that relationship a lot more dynamic, if you will.
Yeah.
um, but with siblings, I think one of the most important things is it compromise? Maybe not, but to what extent are you willing to say, like, because we sh- grew up together and we, share blood, if you will. To what extent is like my sibling helping me get to the point of where I want to be at? Like, for example, if you have a relationship with an older brother, what roles are there? Are you really the older brother, or
Mhm.
are you actually the little brother? Those type of things. So sibling relationships are definitely something complex, just because of the reality that someone can grow up right next to us and maybe not hold the same beliefs and values and go on different paths and
Mhm.
see different avenues for a good life that we may not agree on.
Mhm.
And because we grew up so close together, it makes things a lot more complicated.
It does. Because it's trying to make you try to figure it out, like why
Yeah,
are but it's not for us to understand. It's what do you want from them? Like we
yeah,
try to seek more than what they're willing to give us in this moment. They're simply our brother or our sister, and leaving it at that, not expecting more, not expecting them to have that similar values and mindset because we wasn't around each other 24/7. Different things have encounter and things like that. Just because we share some similar genetic makeup doesn't mean our values and our morals are going to be the same. But do I want to have this relationship with my sibling? And if
yeah,
I do, what does that look like? I don't want to compromise me for the relationship, but I'm willing to compromise being in a space with you because you're my sister or because you're my brother, And what does that look like in me having that? Okay, I can have this relationship with you, but I have to have it in this capacity. You get to define that, whoever you are.
very true. And it's also the fact that, like, in our sibling relationships, we kind of have like certain ideals that are kind of imposed on us from various things. Like, we may grow up watching TV shows of seeing what a sibling relationship looks like, and then we're like, oh, that's what a brother and little brother relationship is supposed to be, or a
Mm-hmm.
little sister and big sister.
Hmm.
So it's like these expectations that we kind of have too. And
Yeah.
understanding, is the expectation that we have for our sibling relationship something that we is it feasible to have, and is that something that I really want to have too?
Hmm. I'm happy that you said that because a lot of our ideas and perspectives comes from what we see on TV, what we
Yeah,
experience. Because a lot of us, honestly, I'm not going to say me, but me, I guess, because but I know working with people, a lot of people they don't see that relationship because now we have our parents and they don't. I have clients who said their dad never talked to their sister. Like they don't even know their aunt. They don't even know their uncle. So how can I know what a real sibling relationship looks like when I never did? And then I see it on TV and they hug and they laugh and they go to concerts, they out,
yeah,
they for each other. I wonder why you ain't like that. Now you holding resentment towards this person. Well, I ain't never even see that. Why you
yeah,
blaming me for a relationship that I never even witnessed? We both ain't see this. And you
exactly.
putting something on me because you just watched this Disney show.
Right.
That's me. I did just watch that Disney show. Why you pranks on each other like even Steven? Look.
Right. Yeah. And it's so true though, because like those things really do kind of like influence the way that we perceive our sibling relationships.
Yeah,
And
it does.
then maybe we get frustrated when the relationship that we have doesn't mirror what we see for other people having, or what maybe society depicts a particular relationship is supposed to look like.
Yeah, and I think that's the biggest one is intimate relationships,
Yeah.
which I know is what people expect when they saw this live. So we'll get into that to wrap it up. And if anybody has any questions, like once again, you can drop it in the comments. But intimate relationships, I feel like that one. Come on, I talked about this. We got relationship goals, and people still own that. Like, how can somebody else whole entire relationship be your goal? I just don't. You don't even know what's going on in that relationship. We see relationship I mean, in every capacity, in every form, on the news, in the movies, and like, and now we're trying to mirror those relationships. So yeah, let's
Right.
talk intimate relationships.
So, right, relationships, intimate relationships in particular. So, because like we've been talking about love quite a bit too, I think it's understanding like what is romantic love, right? There's passion, there's attraction, intimacy, and within that romantic love, hopefully it can develop into more of like like a committed love, right? Because romantic love with passion, attraction, and intimacy, those things wean and wane over the course of relationships, right?
Mhm.
But hopefully they can evolve into something deeper and more stable over time, and that's where like committed love really comes in. It's that steady enduring love built on dedication and partnership.
Mhm.
That's why I always refer, like I've been with my partner for 12 years, and I call her my partner because like really we're navigating life together.
Yeah, I mean, you know me. I always say partner. I've never said anything.
Yeah,
I do because that is your life partner. Your
yeah.
that's your partner in crime. That's your everything. That's your partner in life. And that
Hmm.
person is, and you gotta pick wisely when you do that. You
Yeah.
just have to. I'm so happy that you said that because it is a steady love. This ain't no, and it is gonna be some bumps. But how we gonna deal with those lemons when they come? You know, because
Mhm.
how committed are you in this love? A lot of people are not committed at all because they're not even committed in loving themselves. Like,
Yeah.
how can you make a commitment with someone else when you ain't even made the commitment to commit to yourself? You
Right.
know?
There's definitely that part, and like also a really important part about like committed love is, it's also a lot about the choices and consistency rather than just like letting passion fuel it, right?
Mhm.
Because when we navigate our relationships with our partners, there's a lot of choices that we have to make together.
Yeah.
But the reality is although I like to see like intimate relationships as like forming like we, right? It's almost like the shared identity. However, we don't lose ourselves in that shared identity. There's
Hmm.
still an I and we to a certain extent.
Yeah.
Um, and when I say like becoming a we, I like to think about it in just in the simple fact of like when we have that type of love in a committed relationship, when we see something we may like, maybe we see a reel on Instagram and it's like, oh, my partner would get a kick out of that. We send it to them,
Hmm.
right? And it's like those little small things that we do, the choices and consistency fueling our relationship rather than just allowing passion to just try to drive it, because
Hmm.
passion can sometimes die out sometimes in intimate relationships, as we all know. But it's really a lot about that, something having more stable and deep that can evolve over time.
Hmm. I think it's still what you said. It's the, is this something, or is this someone I'm willing to do life with? Because if it
Hmm.
is, you're gonna, whatever bump you come across, we're gonna get through it because we, maybe we've been through this. And I'm not saying the problem is the same, but we've encountered road bumps in the road, but we always come on the other side because we made that commitment to do
Right.
life together because we're like partners in this. Yeah, so I would say 12 years that's a long time, decade. So how do you manage that? Like in couples therapy, what advice do you give? And I'm gonna tell you what I give in my.
Sure. So one thing that's super important is never stop getting to know your partner.
Yeah,
That
yeah.
that is one thing. Date your partner, often, and continue to get to know them. Leverage your curiosity to really get to know who they are. We're constantly evolving, you
Mhm,
know, as
mhm.
individuals. So never stop getting to know your partner is one of the big things for sure.
That's what I would recommend. So, so since we own that, I want to make sure people know that continue to date your partner, continue to get to know your partner because we evolve every day. I may see this documentary and it hit me differently than how it hit you, and
Right.
that's gonna make me evolve differently and how it's going to make you evolve. But me even telling you about it, let me tell you my perspective. That's how
Yeah.
you get to know your partner, and how do you say that? Like because you can tell them to date, but then they're not intentionally dating. They're not intentionally getting to know their partner. So how? Because when you tell somebody to date, they're like, I go on dates all the time, but are you really trying to get to know that person? So how do you? I'll just say it. What questions, or is there a certain thing that you to go deeper into just dating and get to know that person? What would you say even further than that?
So that's a really good question. So, well, like to kind of touch on dates, right? Like depending on how long you've been in a relationship for, like dates can like really look totally different. However, but in that, for getting to know your partner, I think it's definitely using curiosity and not assuming things too, right? Because like you mentioned, like you may be watching a particular film with your partner and you'd be like, oh, they probably think this. Well, instead of assuming, right, let's actually use curiosity to get to know what their perspective is on various things. Um, so never stop dating your partner, continue to get to know them, and set aside time, particularly to just have um, moments of intimacy is super important to build that emotional closeness, right?
Let me see, because I want to make it be very clear to everyone. It's not just physical
It's
intimacy.
not.
I
Yeah,
knew you was, but I need to let the audience know because they know.
right.
And someone say you explain siblings relationship in such a relatable way, truly valuable. But I when I work with couples, I always tell them to be intentional about
Yeah,
talking to and getting to know one another. Because therapy is you being intentional. But
right.
I don't want therapy to be your crutch. I want you to learn the tools and the techniques outside of me. So my that's the I don't give a lot of people homework, but I always give my couples this because it's harder because it does take two. What Lisa said earlier, it takes two to repair any relationship, not just
Yeah,
family, not just friends, or even employers. Because even with the employer, it has to take the employer and the employee to do the work to make this relationship, sustainable. But set aside that time. So every Friday at 6, if you want to make that be your date night, 6 to 7, we go on, we eat lunch or we do something, and make
right.
sure you're talking. Don't if you go into the movies, that doesn't count as you getting to know one another.
Yeah,
Anything you guys cannot talk to each other, it doesn't count. It's
yeah,
you being intentional, like you said earlier, being intentional about the conversations you have. And there's millions of card games out there. Do them and talk
right.
about the things, even what how you evolving. What's something new you learned this week? Like
Yeah,
really be intentional about getting to know one another. Because once again, how we started this, a lot of us are sleeping with strangers, and I'm gonna talk about it this week. A lot of us are sleeping with strangers. We don't even know the person we laying next to, and sometimes we don't even know our sibling. Sometimes we don't even know our parent. Like I'm learning, and I want to know them too. Because in learning myself, I'm like, dang, I've been making these judgments and assumptions on my parents, on my siblings, on my friends, in my family, and some of them may be true. I'm gonna be honest, some of them may be true, but a lot of it is because we don't know what they've been through. We miss that moment. We miss that trauma. We miss that, you know what I'm saying? And even in relationships, sometimes like you ain't gonna believe what happened to me at work. Something very traumatic happened. Or your partner goes to a family event and you don't know what happened. And then now I know because I want to do this, we only got a few minutes left. Talk about what's arising. We do work with a lot of people in the LGBTQ community and also non-monogamous relationship and people finding what works for them, because you got to do what works for you. Just because you see it on social media and it's trending or whatever, do what works for you and you gonna know it. If it feels awkward or funny, don't be just doing something just to sign up for it. But can you talk a little bit more about relationships and the different types of relationships that's popping up and how you can handle that? Because how does a therapist handle a poly relationship where it's 4 or 6 people? Do you do therapy? Is it considered group therapy, or is it still couples therapy? How does that work?
it's definitely still couples therapy. So, like with ethically non-monogamous or poly relationships, like one of the like defining features for it, and there's kind of like a joke sometimes that runs in it, is that in poly relationships, it's really a lot about scheduling and talking about boundaries, right? sometimes that's the case.
Yeah, because they do it so well because it has to be when it's so many people involved, and we
Right.
take that for granted because you still got to do that when it's just me and you. When it's just two of us in this committed relationship, we still got to do schedules because life does get busy. Because
Right.
sometimes in a lot of my relationship counseling couples, I always because it's so funny when I ask this question. I'm talking about what's your bed routine? They be like, it's so funny that you said that because a lot of them don't have one. He's
Right.
up, staying up, or she's up with the kids. She falls asleep in the kids' bedroom sometimes.
Hmm.
He's on the game. You know what I'm saying? So they was like, it's so like literally that question alone be shocking people. They was like,
Right.
I'm like, cuz we don't be on the same page. How y'all in a relationship and y'all we don't know what that person is doing. Like that's sad too to me because that's
Right.
taking the intimacy away. We don't need that physical intimacy, but just being close to each other, we don't even have that because something has went missing. So I like that, but we get this ideal of it's just all fun, we just loving
Yeah.
it. But when it's a real relationship, it doesn't matter what it looks like. We got to put in the time to work for this relationship to be successful. And of course, if it's 4 or 5 or 6 of us, we got to be even more intentional.
So true. Intentionality is so important, right? It's
Mhm.
the consistent check-ins, understanding when, like, for poly couples or ethically non-monogamous, it's like when the choice is made to open the relationship, it's like really the partners coming together to truly understand, are why are we opening this relationship up? Like, have we really checked in with each other? Are we continuing to check in with one another? Are we checking in with our other partner? What do boundaries look like? um, it's making the explicit even more explicit, and that happens through genuine and authentic conversations.
Uh-huh. And what some people would say are non-traditional relationship are becoming more and more healthy because in non-traditional relationships, or whatever people want to call it, the LGBT community, I feel like they go out their way. The population, the whole community, they go out their way to be intentional about their relationship because I feel like it's already a lot of judgment into it. So they already know this was going to be a hard relationship for them. So they go out their way to be intentional about having those conversations. How are we going to deal with this? How are we going to present this? And but even when it comes to two people doing this, we still have to be intentional about what we're doing and what if this arises and how we're going to do this and how we're going to handle this. It doesn't matter what the relationship consists of or who the relationship is with. It's about being intentional and first knowing yourself so you can
Yes.
show up intentional in that. Because if you don't know yourself and you're like, I don't know if I want an open relationship, and then you just signed yourself up for that, then what? And now you're unhappy because you don't want to let this person go, but you haven't addressed your true feelings. And
Exactly.
even that happens a lot of times in couples therapy, especially with non-monogamous. Because a lot of because even when we do couples therapy, I'm just letting y'all know we do therapy, couples therapies, in relationship therapy. We do one-on-one sometimes when we feel like it's necessary, and when we do those one-on-ones, a lot of stuff comes up. So if you're, I'll because I'll be talking too much. But I want to give the last few minutes to you and just any closing comments and guidance and advice. And of course, I'm going to leave all of Jeremy's contact if you want to do couples counseling or any type of relationships, family, any type of relationship kind of counseling. Jeremy is definitely a person you want to seek out, and all of the contact information will be on YouTube. And even on YouTube, you can always leave questions and comments. But yeah, Jeremy, can you just final words or advice, guidance?
Sure. So one thing is, love isn't something that you just fall into. It's something that you build choice by choice. And a lot of the times we bring stories about who we are into relationships, and part of love is sometimes rewriting those stories together. And
Yeah.
that happens through genuine, authentic conversations. And like we've mentioned, that come with intention, right? Um, and I think it's also really important that in our relationships, whether it's with our friends, families, intimate relationships, that we are constantly checking in with ourselves and with others, and really coming from a place of compassion and leveraging empathy to really understand who we are and the folks that we interact with.
Yeah, I really appreciate that. And especially like you being in a relationship with someone for over a decade. And of course, I work with a lot of people who been with someone for 20 years, 17 years, and they're going through a divorce. It's like they never known each other. And that's why I'm so happy that you got to continue to date whoever you're with, in whatever capacity. And you got to continue to be intentional and continue to get to know yourself, because even if you have been with that person, even when you were 16 and now you're, 36, like
Yeah.
even if you have been in each other's lives, like a lot happens in those 20 years, but a lot of also happened in those first 16 years that you didn't even know this person.
So
And,
true.
and that's why I say a lot of people are just sleeping with strangers. We got to get to know ourselves and know the person we want to say we want to be in this relationship with, whether it's committed or not, whatever that relationship is, you get to define it. Nobody else. No
So
relationship goals. You are the goal for your relationship. My
it's,
goal, we talking. But anything else before we leave tonight?
I think, and just of course, we've kind of talked about it. It's just like self love, pay attention to your body. Of
Mhm.
course, always when navigating, you know, difficult or complex conversations, pay attention to what's going on for yourself, too. And I think that's something, loving yourself, so therefore you can extend that to others.
Yeah. Because you can't expect to be in a loving relationship if you don't love yourself. So I'm happy. We're gonna always end with love and being your authentic self.
Yes.
Thank you so much for being here and sharing your expertise. I hope, I know a lot of people are gonna receive this because it's gonna be out there. But thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me on. It's been such a pleasure and a lot of fun.
All right.